Welcome back to This Is Halloween, a deep dive into the animated classic The Nightmare Before Christmas. In this episode, we're going to analyze and celebrate the design of Burton and Selleck's masterpiece. The overall aesthetic and semiotic choices that create a seamless imaginary world, the influences that shaped Tim Burton's personal style, and what we, as artists ourselves, can learn from it and take into our own creative practice. As we mentioned in episode 1, Nightmare began as a poem and series of sketches created by Burton while he was working at Disney. And although he didn't direct the final film, its look totally embodies his art style, developed over the preceding decade as an animator and draftsman. In an interview, frequent collaborator Colleen Atwood once said, "We both focus on minute details. In Tim's world, he might take you into a huge room, but the most important thing will be the doorknob and the shot of the hand that touches it. He comes from animation, which makes a huge difference in perspective. He's a painter, really." And you can see this in his earliest student work, like this clip from something called The King and the Octopus, and sequences from his film Stalk of the Celery Monster. There is a clear attention to the way the characters are constructed, and little adjustments in their movement. So what else defines Burton's visual style? It can be described as dark, gothic, but also reminiscent of storybooks. It's very playful, it's often childlike, primitive, in the art theory sense. It plays with bold shapes and big expressions, creating things that are strangely beautiful, or maybe so strange they're beautiful, if that makes sense. Vistas, characters, and objects whose imperfection and poetry simply demands your attention. To understand Burton better, we also have to understand his influences. Throughout his career, Burton has drawn from a handful of very strong inspirations. There's Charles Addams, the American cartoonist and creator of the Addams Family; Edward Gorey, the artist and writer whose 1963 picture book, The Gashly Crumb Tinies, is literally like a fucked up Dr. Seuss book about children dying in different ways. There's Dr. Seuss himself, the pen name of Theodore Seuss Geisel, creator of some of the most popular children's books of all time. Ray Harryhausen, the British-American animator and special effects pioneer, responsible for the iconic stop-motion skeletons in 1963's Jason and the Argonauts.
Kill them all!
He loves Universal and Hammer monster movies, like The Curse of Frankenstein and Horror of Dracula. Classic TV movies and Hollywood golden era reruns like It's a Wonderful Life, which I have a video about. I'd also compare him to the likes of Roald Dahl and Quentin Blake. Blake's expressive illustration has always paired so perfectly with Dahl's cheeky and often very dark children's stories. And Burton's own writing, combined with his illustrations, has a pretty similar effect. All this set against a suburban Californian upbringing, then trained in a Disney environment, but also showing a healthy rebellion against the House Disney style. So, like most successful artists, we can start to form connections through generations of other creatives, and see Tim Burton's craft not as an anomaly, but as a continuation of a rich American tradition. One that draws together absurdism, Dadaism and the surreal, horror and fantasy, childlike naivete. And we're working in animation, a medium that's more heightened and naturally inclined towards abstraction and expressionism without the expectation of realism that comes with something like live action. It lends itself to simplification, which can work in a storyteller's favor. An audience's tolerance for things like 3D space and continuity breaks is going to be far more relaxed. Characters breaking into song might be easier to swallow because, they're made of clay. Animation in general is so fascinating in this respect. It allows for an easier suspension of disbelief. But in the case of stop motion, the craft's demand for precision creates new opportunities for intricacy and immersion.
Does it still have a foot?
Let me see, let me look. Is it rotted and covered with gunk?
Let me explain.
Right down to the bits and bolts, this movie is full of wonderful detail that should be observed and celebrated. In the very first opening shots, there are these beautiful, huge builds. These opening sets, like this bed, are skewed and distorted and create these really wild, forced perspectives. There are loads of recurring shapes in the architecture, like diamond coffin shapes in doorways and faces in lanterns. You can freeze on any wide shot and see a dozen amazing, deliberate decisions being made. We can look at our principal location, Halloween Town, and just how clear and defined its identity is. This is a world where absolutely nothing is symmetrical. Everything is deeply textured. It's gnarly, it's grimy, it's sticky even, or covered in scratches. And there are faces and animals hidden everywhere. There are jack-o'-lanterns, cats, skulls, eyes, in almost every shot. And if you think about the materials being represented here, Halloween Town is very metallic. There's a lot of kind of tarnished steel colors here. There's wooden things, but they're rough or rotten. There's a lot of stone happening. It's very industrial. It's dark and contrasty. There are a lot of qualities here that you might associate with Victorian London. Halloween Town also has rules and structures. It has hierarchy, these purposeful places that we recognize, and they're brought to life by the characters that inhabit them. The scientist in his laboratory, the mayor in the town hall, the seedy underbelly, and the villain who runs it. Through the design work being done here, we're shown enough to feel like this town lives and breathes on either side of the runtime of this film. And we can look at Christmas Town too. There's a little less to talk about here simply because we really only see it for one scene, but it provides a really strong contrast to Halloween Town. Here, things still aren't symmetrical, but they're a lot less distorted. Everything is clean, it's more vibrant. I noticed that all these little kind of symbols and shorthand, there's cute little signs for things. The gingerbread man, the hat above the hat shop. When we look at the materials, they're all really organic. There's a lot of red brick. There's a lot of wooden objects, but this time they're planed or polished. We're working a lot with primary colors, blue, green, red, white. There are more light sources, creating a slightly more uniform and well-lit environment. And the architecture here is folksy and, vaguely Dutch.
Christmas Town?
Here's just a list of some of the incredible things that I noticed when I was scrubbing through the film to make this video. Sally's body, when she comes apart, is filled with dead leaves. The mayor's bolo tie is a spider and Jack's bow tie is a bat. I've talked already about the band. I love the band, and all of their instruments are amazing. On top of nothing being symmetrical, there's this running thing that circles are extremely imperfect. And also almost every circular object in the film has little spirals on it, like the microscope and Sally's sewing machine. In Oogie's Casino, the one-armed bandits look like literal bandits. And pausing on the town clock blew my little mind, right? Not only is this clock a wreath, it's also a cobweb, and instead of hours, the points on the clock are months in the year. This, prompts so many questions about this world. How does time work? How does time work in this world? Is the implication here that every year in the real world is a day here? I think it is. It's incredible. Love and attention has been poured into the most minute, itty-bitty details of this movie. And again, it's in a medium that kind of encourages this, right? Owing to a very long and very deliberate production timeline. When you're building a world from scratch, you have to answer every little question about how it looks. There is no default set, or we'll just shoot the location as it is. As an aside, I think this helps us understand Tim Burton's success as a director overall, because in his best live-action work, he manages to inject these intangible qualities. Through exaggerated production design, he kind of treats reality like a cartoon, and it totally works. So having pored over the visuals of this film, I've come to understand it a bit more clearly as this kind of distillation, this collage of other inspirations, far more than I ever did before. This bubbling soup of monster movies and holiday movies, and the particular work of several specific cartoonists. I've also arrived at a greater appreciation for its detail. The amount of work that has imbued every element of this thing with varied and distinct personalities. But what lessons can we learn here as creatives ourselves? Firstly, no matter the medium, making a deliberate design decision is always better than not. What could this clothing choice be saying? What could this color palette be saying? Answering these questions is going to deepen your personal expression and make the product unique. Secondly, qualities like this will naturally deepen and become more rich as the result of an attentive and dedicated process, one which you're engaging with emotionally, collaboratively, and where taking your time over something is encouraged. And lastly, and this is maybe a bit more intangible, but I think it's something that many artists struggle with, and that's having the confidence to take something to an extreme. To, drill down on an entire world based on one thing to the, exclusion of everything else and see where it takes you. Some artists never reach this kind of level of understanding that every little piece of a project, from the very smallest detail to the largest, can be fluid and malleable. This might even be the defining lesson of Burton's career, especially in mediums that allow for more departure from realism. Get freaky with it. Stretch and play. Make that color brighter, make that object longer or bigger, make the comparative scale of things so much more extreme. Be willing to embrace childlike structures and exaggeration, but also be capable of backing them up with detail. If you can figure out both sides, the micro as well as the macro, people will love the world you make for them. Thank you for enjoying this episode of This Is Halloween. In the next episode, we're going to be going over the characters in the film, their characteristics, their motivations, their relationship dynamics. It's going to get a little bit weird.